to come along to today's Community Safety and Corporate Planning Committee meeting. We are being, I'm all just to make everyone aware that's in the room, we are being streamed, I believe. So please consider that when going forward. Before we start, I'd just like to make a small statement, only a minor one. We're going to hear a lot today about the amazing work that our staff, officers and firefighters across the board have been doing during COVID and the pandemic. It would be remiss of me if I didn't ask the committee to support me in sending our thanks to everyone in the service that have gone above and beyond in their duty. It's amazing. Every day I hear heartening things about the work that we've been doing, and I just wanted to put on record the fact that our thanks goes out to everyone. And I'd welcome, I'm sure that members of the committee, as we go through the meeting today, will be making the point, but it's important to make the point from the start, how grateful we all are for the amazing work that you've all been doing. So I just wanted to put that on record now before we started the meeting, and thank you all.
Happy to second that, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Sam, our apologies for absence, please.
Andrew Saywell is substituted. Just at this point, could I quickly remind members, please, to keep their microphones off, or anybody in the meeting to keep their microphones off if you're not speaking, and if you have bandwidth issues, your video as well. And as I mentioned, if there are any problems with raising hands using the technology, then please indicate via the chat function to Steve Yates that you need to speak, and Steve will relay that information to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Are there any other apologies? No? Okay, minutes then, please, members. It surprised me when I saw them, but hopefully this will change going forward. The last meeting was over a year, well, almost a year ago, the 27th of June 2019. The minutes have been circulated. Are there any matters of accuracy, members? Are there any matters arising from those minutes?
No.
Thank you, members. So as such, are we happy to agree those as a true record, and I sign them when I get the opportunity?
I'll propose.
Yeah, agree.
Chair, could I just ask everybody just indicate one by one that they're happy to do that, just by saying yes, agreed?
Jeff, yes.
Yes, agreed.
Happy with that?
Yeah, happy with that as well, agreed.
Sam, just to make it a little bit easier for you going forward, are you more happy if we were taking votes, unless it's a critical vote, which is just supporting a paper, if we're happy that I make the reference, anyone against, we take that as the same, having everyone to go around?
We can do that, Chair, if that works for you. As long as I am absolutely clear, obviously it's slightly more difficult with this mechanism. As long as I'm clear, that's absolutely fine.
Members, any dissent to that? There we go, that's smoothed a little bit further. Okay, item 3 of our agenda, items requiring urgent attention. I'm not aware of any, Sam?
No, we don't have any, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So moving on, item 4 of the agenda, impacts of COVID. Just to let you know that draw members' attention to the recommendations that are there. They may change as we go forward. We'll try and keep you up to date with it, but please remember, if you want to make any recommendations or points, you need to make, obviously, be proposed and seconded, of course. So without further ado, who's introducing this one, Sam? Damien, I saw the wave, that's fine. Damien, carry on. If you'd like to introduce yourself and then off and running. And members, as indicated, I'm happy to take questions if you want to in the chat, but obviously raise your hand just so we have an idea of what everyone's talking about. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chair, and good afternoon, members. For those that I've not met, my name is Damien Bourlaise. I am the Director of Service Improvement. I appreciate that you would have had the report that was submitted to CSCP, but I just want to summarise some of the key points, and more than welcome to take questions. We do have Maria Simpson, who's also the online, who's the Programme Manager. so I can direct any specific questions to Maria, who may have a bit more information for you. So just a little bit of context. In March, we entered business continuity response due to COVID. And as you are fully aware, that had a massive implication for not only the organisation, but businesses alike. In terms of our organisation and response, we dealt with that, as you would expect, in a very effective and efficient manner. But we continue to monitor legislation, guidance from the government, NFCC, and other factors to ensure that we are compliant and also provide organisational assurance. But like most other organisations, we, and in particular the Safer Together programme, did not escape the impact of COVID. So based on the impact of some of those changes, some of the legislative requirements, we continued to work where we could on the areas of Safer Together, and we made sure that if possible, we would progress to cover any lost time. So there are some key areas within the report. I'm just going to kind of go and summarise each in particular. So from a Safer Together, the service delivery operating model, we did make some progress on the second and third appliances and replacements. However, a lot of the factors that were built into replacing those appliances with another appliance, we struggled due to, I would say, suppliers. So in terms of achieving some of the demands of listing systems and other factors, it meant that our supply chain was completely seized. So we struggled to progress some of those key areas. Topsham, we managed to look at Topsham and done one-to-one conversations with everyone in Topsham to ensure we can relocate them to other stations. That was very successful, a lot of people engagement during that time. And since then, we have also looked at moving Topsham to headquarters and also a place right at station 60. So we're managing to increase, I think, fast track the move from Topsham to headquarters. So that was an opportunity that we seized. And that only came out of working more remotely. The current holders, for example, ICT of that building, we found that we saw an opportunity to work remotely, and that freed that space for Topsham crews. It's fantastic. We closed Budley at the end of March, and crews are relocated to Exmouth. And we've also been to the station and identified some of the factors in terms of evaluating the station ready for auction and release. We've also progressed a significant amount of work in regards to our roving appliance and other areas within Safer Together's service delivery operating model. In terms of fleet replacement, this workstream has been impacted by COVID, in particular with sourcing products and timescales of suppliers, but we have managed to deliver a draft business case in regards to our entire fleet replacement. So it's enabled to create space and actually look at what the whole fleet replacement program will be. So it's good news there. The people development project has progressed well. We've now developed a framework that links directly with the National Fire Chief Council's leadership framework, and also provided guidance in terms of staff development, both for uniform and non-uniform members. That includes elements around promotion development, talent management. ICT and that digital transformation, the whole work stream, which underpins an awful lot of our transformation and development, it has not escaped the impact of COVID. We've had to ensure that we could redirect the ICT developers to support the business in tracking a lot of our test and trace, the sickness management, and also provide the organizational assurance with a lot of data. So they have been tied up with COVID. However, they have continued where possible to work on a lot of the other work streams, which I've just previously explained. So in regards to achievements, We have relocated the crews from Budley to Exmouth. We've looked at the release of that estate and conducted a review there as well. We're continuing to work with the Topsham crews to identify which individuals will be moving to our headquarters site and then again at Middlemore. We've managed to identify a building at headquarters, which is currently undergoing a review of how we're going to support those crews moving in. We've done the rollout of our personal protective equipment in terms of the lightweight PPE that firefighters use. So that's done, that project is closed. And overall, the organisation has managed to progress elements of the Safer Together programme and service delivery operating model while supporting the business to respond to COVID as well. There might be a good time for me to stop, but that's a brief summary of the paper that I've submitted. The team are continuing to monitor, I think, the horizons in regard to government regulations, any government recommendations as well from the NFCC. And as a result, we are responding accordingly. So we're continuing to re-baseline the Safer Together programme and make sure that we're able to accelerate some areas and manage the impact of others. Happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you. I remember to unmute myself. That was a good start. Members, are there any questions? I see that Councillor Trowell is requested to speak. So if you'd like to take it over, Jeff, thank you. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you very much, Chair, and welcome to you all. I would like to thank and congratulate those crews in Budley, Salterton and Exmouth for the smooth transition of the relocation. I've spoken to quite a few of the firefighters, a few little glitches to start with, but all in all, they're very, very happy with the move. My question is, though, with the sale of Budley Salterton going to auction, can I ask if the funds that come from Budley Salterton are used proportionately to assist in the extra training facilities and other workspaces at the Exmouth station?
Thank you very much, Councillor, for the question. Can I just reiterate and echo your statement in regards to the crews at those respective stations? They've been really professional, very accommodating, and hugely supportive. And it's all about the people. So you're absolutely right. They've been fantastic. In regards to the latter question, obviously the sale of an estate will go back into our capital programme, but the training aspect, there'll be no need to actually redirect those funds because we have clear training aspects and also investment within all of our estates. So absolutely, that would be covered already.
Thank you for that explanation.
I see Councillor Doggett, I believe, had his hand up. Ian, did you want to speak, sir? You don't need to unmute yourself. Hold the thought and then...
Yes.
There you go. Oh, no, back again. That's it.
Should be okay. Should be okay. Okay.
Off you go. Thank you, sir.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. What I really wanted to ask the gentleman, you mentioned the other day, I know, when I was on the other meeting, about the roving vehicles. And I believe, can I just check when they're due in now? Because I know you've mentioned, obviously, the problem with coronavirus and all that delaying work on these sort of things. Is it now September or December, or when they're likely to be available to, you know, our area, you know?
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Doggett. It's one of those factors that I'm really passionate about, and I know the executive board is also very passionate about in terms of where we can identify progress and new innovation like the roving appliance, that we do accelerate that. We're currently progressing roving appliances and also the way in which we use data so they can be deployed. So we are currently combining our prevention and our protection information to increase the effectiveness of these appliances. There's a project team that are full steam ahead in regards to roving appliances, and I wouldn't have a start date at the moment, but one of the key things we are doing is looking at decreasing the impact of COVID on roving appliances, because that's where we feel we can really make some big changes. So I wouldn't have it.
Thank you very much.
Yet.
Yeah, thanks for that.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I've just realised, Margaret, I apologise. Margaret Corvid is a new member of the committee who's has come on the committee, come on to the authority from Plymouth. So I didn't realise you were there. So I apologise first of all, and welcome to the meeting, Margaret. Do you have a question, please?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Redmond. With reference to point 4.3, it was talking about this delay of some sourcing of materials due to work slowdown and stoppage during the coronavirus response. Just inviting you to speculate going forward, is there, if there's a second wave or even a third wave of this, is there likely to be more slowdown in obtaining these supplies, and is there some sort of contingency plan in place? And I've got a note to lower my hand, please, and I'm trying to figure out how to do that, so bear with me.
Thank you. So we're constantly working with our suppliers in regards to the resources and some of the deliverables. Obviously, we've got contracts that we want to make sure that we are delivering on time, because as we're talking, everything's predicated on us getting the materials that we need so we can ultimately deliver some of the changes that we said that we would. So we are working with those suppliers to understand how they've been impacted. Now, we've had assurance from some suppliers that actually, for example, we have some other appliances which are coming through where they've secured that delivery. So we can say we are delivering 2 additional appliances within the next 2 weeks, and that's a given. However, as they start to re-baseline the impact of coronavirus, we are now, I think, less confident on some other areas. So until we actually see the impact of the second wave and what that means to a specific area, whether it's localized and or across a specific business or continent, is very difficult to hold them to account. A lot of our suppliers are overseas, but we are completely live to that. I'm more than happy if that doesn't necessarily 100% answer the question, to refer to Maria Simpson from a program manager perspective, who may have more information. But if not, then hopefully that'll be enough for you, Councillor.
That's a great response. Thank you very much.
Councillor, do you mind? Sorry, Chair. Do you mind just if I follow that up?
Carry on.
Thank you. I just wanted to take this opportunity, Margaret, just to say that I appreciate you talking a lot about information and plans that have been put in place, obviously prior to you joining the authority. I just want to extend the offer for us to have a discussion where I can actually bring you up to speed and talk to you actually about where the decisions, why the decisions, what the impact has been, and then that puts it into context. So if you wouldn't mind, I would like to have a discussion maybe after or make contact in the very near future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Saylor. Andrew, I believe you got a question?
Yes, I have. Thanks, Chairman. I'm just thinking a little bit more broadly on this, and but reading the report, it more talks about like the impact of COVID really on just having delays on things. But are we actually anticipating making any changes, more strategic changes to the Safer Together programme because of the impact of COVID and the effect it has has had on society in more general terms, or is it again a case of it's probably still too early to say, and we need to look at how it will change the risk profile of the area? But I'm just thinking our Safer Together was written in the pre-pandemic world, and it would probably not be very sensible for us to carry on full steam ahead on an old plan without reviewing how the risk profile has actually changed once we come out of the pandemic.
Damien, before you might want to, I was going to ask a question around that anyway. You might want to include the impacts on the current IRMP and how we might be looking to review that in that response.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Sable, that's a fantastic question. And it would be, I think, very short-sighted if we didn't take the opportunities from learning from coronavirus and what that means to our business, let alone the country, the sector, and our communities as a whole. This is our opportunity right here and right now to actually make some significant changes and transform the way in which the organisation responds to the customer needs and what we are actually here to do. So the Safer Together programme, as you are fully aware, is here to deliver a response against a risk. Now, the risk has changed, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the principles of our Safer Together programme needs to change. What we need to do is ensure that we've got the right data and we understand what that means, and so we can align the tools to the risk. Now, we have been doing an IRMP COVID specific, and we continually make sure that we're evaluating how the risk has changed. A lot of people have been staying at home, a lot of people have been furloughed, and what that means actually, people are now obviously not working, not travelling. What does that mean? Less road traffic collisions, more people working from home. So yes, to the IRMP question, we will always continue to evaluate the risk. And obviously, when we do a next formal IRMP review, we will be taking into account that learning. Now, when we're talking about the Safer Together programme, we made a commitment to the public to ensure that we can deliver a risk-based organisation and demonstrate to you, the authority, and also the public and the HMI that we are effective, efficient, and we know what we're doing and why we're doing it. Now, that's not changed in regards to the principles of the Safer Together programme and the service delivery operating model. It's just how do we enhance that moving forward? Now, what we are doing, and Maria obviously is significantly supporting the recovery process to coronavirus, is we are learning a huge amount of information. I sent the members last week a survey just to gather any information in regards to how we've dealt with COVID. And we have worked with all of our local partners. We have made sure that we have done an impact assessment on a huge amount of things so we can extract those lessons. What we're doing now is delivering the Safer Together programme, because that's what we said we would do. And we will be held to account based on those elements. So some of those things we will absolutely deliver. What we will also do is make sure that we, for example, this forum, where we've got the virtual meetings, we will be taking that opportunity and looking at our environmental strategy, home working, the way in which we train, the way in which we use technology, so we can not only achieve elements within our Safer Together programme, but be truly, truly innovative, and as a result have people working across the organisation, reducing our carbon footprint, being an employer of choice, and tracking those benefits. So when we are asked the question, actually, what did you do? And show me the net benefit and the return on investment, we're going to have all that down there. So that's something that I and Maria and the executive board are currently working through. So absolutely, it's a fantastic question. I'm hugely passionate about making sure we combine it. And yeah, it's going to be a very exciting future.
Right, come back on that, Chair.
Yes.
Yeah. No, thank you, Damien, and that was a good answer as well. Could I suggest, if we're going to be doing all of this work, that we certainly have an update brought back to this committee for the next meeting, and also do we again want to look at doing what we did previously with getting members involved, with having either a workshop or some sort of task and finish group, which again, in this new post-COVID world, we can certainly do a lot of that virtually rather than dragging everybody into Service HQ again. But I certainly think Safer Together, we did benefit from having those workshops last time around, and it would be good to have something similar done again.
Absolutely, that's already built into the plan, Councillor. But just to firmly put the members in regards to the current position of the service, we are in a business continuity response phase, and we are ensuring that we are reducing any risk to the organisation and our frontline services. We will shortly, and I'll share with you, we'll be shortly reviewing that position and publishing plans to take us into a declaration of business continuity recovery phase. And that still means we need to be very careful about the safety of the organisation and the people in that. However, to be proactive, that's the sole reason why we sent you the survey to start with, just to start that process even before we start the process. So I can start to really extract your initial thinkings about how did we deal with the response phase, because there will be lessons that we can evaluate before we go into the recovery phase. So please, I urge you to complete the survey. It's very short. And also, I did say feel free to contact me directly and talk about some of those issues, because we will be, as an executive board, and also Maria Simpson, from a programme manager, taking that learning and feeding that into the opportunities. And of course, you'll be front and centre in.
Thank you. Just for clarity, Damien, I think it might be very helpful. As you can imagine, I'm sure everyone's inbox is being flooded at the moment, one way or another. It might be worth you resubmitting your survey to members again. We've mentioned it previously, but we've mentioned it again today, and it would help maybe remind them if it pops back into the inbox. If it helps you to save them shouting at you, you can say that the chair of this committee said to recirculate it again. So you're not harassing them, but it would be a valued piece of information if they could fill it in and respond to it.
Thank you, Chair. I will do that. Feel free to forward my email to your colleagues as well. Thank you.
Sam, you were waving at me. Did you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Chair, I'm quite happy to assist Damien with sending round just a quick reminder to members. So, Damien, please feel free to send that to me to deal with. Chair, if we are moving towards the recommendation, that I just have a slight rephrasing to read out as and when you're on that point. I just didn't want it progress too fast before I could say that. So that's just at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions, but I see that Councillor Trail wants to come back in. So, Jeff, do you want to come back in, sir? And then we'll look to move on if there's no other questions.
Basically, yes, it was the proof of delivery of our service within my ward over the past since the amalgamation has been exceptional. As you may be aware, Budleigh and Exmouth had a large number of incidents which, without the 24-hour cover, those premises visited would have been gutted. The last 2 weeks, we've had 5 arson attacks, and the question that I brought up earlier was what action have been taken with regards to arson incidents. Please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Trail. I'm more than happy to answer that question. However, I'm just mindful that we do have the Director of Service Improvement, Joe Hassel, on the line, and Joe will be able to provide you with a more comprehensive answer, but it's up to you, Chair.
If just conscious of time, really, if Joe wanted to provide a direct response, Jeff, would that be okay? Because it's a local issue, more than the Sam, you're waving at me. Go on.
That it would be my suggestion, Chair, if we could provide that information, and perhaps not only to Jeff, but also the rest of the committee for information outside of the meeting to help you to progress.
Yeah, thank you. I'd go along with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I'll just jump in with a question, and David, not to put you on the spot, but one of the reasons, obviously, money and finance. One of the reasons we were introducing this was to save money for the well, not to save money, to improve the service, but there were financial implications there. The paper didn't seem to highlight where we were with that, whether they were negative, positive, and how where we are currently. And just a quick comment in relation to that, and perhaps if you could find a way to circulate outside of the meeting, just a financial update as far where we are, that might be helpful as well. Yeah,
absolutely, Councillor. So from a financial perspective, we just need to bear in mind that this was a resourcing against risk initiative to ensure that the services we're providing, meeting the risks, we are more effective and efficient as a result. But we need to be mindful that to be more effective and efficient will deliver some money. And that's one of the things which we are currently doing in regards to our medium-term financial plan, is making sure that we can track where we are using less vehicles and also stations, what that's going to be delivering. I wouldn't want to be discussing exact figures at the moment because we are in the process of rebaselining our Safer Together programme. We do not necessarily know the implications of some of the supply chain issues whereby some products have gone up in price. So we need to be careful about being specific. I think what I would just say in summary is that from a budgetary perspective, we're currently on track, and we are just making sure that each of those projects and those lines are recording on a regular basis, because in the future we need to account that the country is going to be scrutinised in regards to its financial return. So that doesn't directly answer your question, I know, but at the same time, I can.
It's a very tactful response, but what it might be worth. My words were mixed, and I apologise for that. It's more a matter of we had cost allocations, didn't we, to it and stuff like that. So I suppose I should have been clearer in what I was saying. What I was actually saying, if there are financial implications with the project because of COVID, is there any way that perhaps we could get that be recompensed for that?
Okay, so yeah, so apologies, I answered part of your first question. So the programme in its entirety is well governed in regards to its financial expenditure. We are currently on track and there are no financial issues. As you would be aware, that we have received a grant to deal with coronavirus, and also a central grant to deal with some of our protection elements as well. Now the service are making sure that it can get the best return on investment for that money to enhance our current programme. But in short, the programme is not overspent. It's being managed extremely well under very difficult circumstances. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank everybody who is leading that project, as well as dealing with the challenges of organisational delivery and coronavirus, along with their personal circumstances as well.
Well said, thank you. Sam, you were waving at me, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Could I just add to that at Resources Committee on the 2nd of July, the Treasurer did prepare a report outlining position in respect of the financial implications for COVID, and we'd be quite happy to circulate that to members of the committee for information as well.
That sounds brilliant. Thank you for your interjection. I've no other questions. I think we almost had a couple of recommendations there. Let me see if I can summarise where we are. Recommendation A might be along the lines of that having considered the evaluation of the impact of COVID on the Safer Together programme, including supply chain issues, as set out in report CSCP 21, the report be noted, and B, that the committee receives at future meetings further updates on progress with the Safer Together programme. Members, those are the two recommendations, that unless anyone else would like to come through. Okay, here's your opportunity. Is there anyone against those or wishing to abstain? I will take that as carried then, Sam, please. Thank you, members, for that. Damien, thank you for your input. And Maria, thank you. You moved on my screen then, Maria, because you were over one side and I was just making sure so thank you both, and please communicate our thanks back out to your colleagues.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Moving on then, item 5 of our agenda, Grenfell recommendations, the progress report. Members, just for update, obviously lots and lots of work has been done behind the scenes in relation to this issue, and what I thought the committee would benefit from would be to be brought up to speed and information in relation to that. So that's why the report's there. Who's presenting that? Is it Joe? Joe, thank you. So Joe, if you'd like to introduce yourself, because don't forget we're going out live over YouTube, so that you never know how many people are watching us now, and you can introduce yourself there. And the hairstyle is looking just as good as mine.
Thanks very much, Lee. Thanks to the chair and thanks to members. So my name is Joe Hassel. I'm Assistant Chief Fire Officer of Service Delivery, and that covers our response, prevention and protection activities. So this paper, as members are aware, this is around the service's response to the recommendations that came out of the Grenfell Tower Phase 1 report. I will be having, so I've also got Area Manager Darren Peters on the line as well, who's been dealing with a lot of this, and his team have been doing some excellent work already. So I'll just take you through, you've got the report in front of you, but I'll take you through some key areas. So firstly, this paper's there to give assurance to members and the committee that the appropriate governance is in place to make sure that we are dealing with the recommendations properly. Not only the recommendations that have come out of Grenfell, but also, as I'll talk about a little bit later, about some grant funding that we've got to make sure that our high risk and high rise buildings are safe. It's also there to make, this is also here just to make sure that you are happy that we're taking a very proactive approach towards the position and that we can adapt to any future changes in legislation. So I won't go through, everyone will be aware of what happened at Grenfell, but essentially there was no one clear reason that the tragedy happened. It was a number of reasons and in a number of areas and industries, and that's why it was so difficult to manage, and that's why it's had such a profound effect on many different areas of organisations and industry. So following the publication of the Grenfell Tower Inquiry Phase 1 report, we reviewed the recommendations and did a top-level gap analysis with a load of essentially a very large spreadsheet with a lot of work that needed to happen to make sure that we were then compliant. That's since been compiled into an assurance tracker, which is tracked on a monthly basis by our own board. So we've got a risk and response governance board with a manager whose sole responsibility is to make sure that we are complying and doing that work. So overall, there were 44 recommendations, and they can essentially be divided into two main groups. There are some of those recommendations that we will have to fit into, and so they're either national legislative changes or they're coming through from the National Fire Chiefs Council that all fire and rescue services will do, but the NFCC are working on behalf of all of us to do that work. And we've actually got someone seconded from the service who's working in that team at the moment. So fortunately, we've got a direct line into there to make sure that we're very early adopters of a lot of this practice. And some of the recommendations were for individual services to make sure that they adopted. There were also a few in there that were very specific to London Fire Brigade, which we won't adopt, but make sure that the principles of those are adopted. It is worth saying to everybody, just for reassurance, that the three towers that were recognised and identified to have the ACM cladding similar to the Grenfell towers, those three towers in Devonport and Plymouth, the cladding has now been completely removed and the building is fully sprinklered with a full evacuation process in place. That's now deemed in the National Fire Chiefs Council guidance as low risk buildings now. So thankfully that major risk that we had has now been dealt with. We do also have in Devon and Somerset 172 buildings that do also apply to our definition of high risk, and that's if there's 6 or more floors or if the building's 18 metres or more in height. So out of the recommendations that were given, the 44, 17 of them are national ones that we are awaiting and are involved in the development of. 27 of them are ones that FRSs have to do themselves. And out of those, we've completed 13 of them. We still have 14 to go, and they are all being worked on at the moment. As you can imagine, some of them were relatively straightforward, which was things like increasing communications on the incident ground. So we've made sure that we've got enough radios now for every firefighter when they're at an incident. Some of them are far more complex, and it was about data collection and various other things. And we have projects for all of these in place. So it's worth noting, as I said earlier, that it's not just that. So the Hackett review also highlighted that it's not just the building that's unsafe. It's systematic failures in many areas. So when we're looking at risk and the way in which we've reconfigured our risk team, it's not to work in silos, because that was one of the failures of Grenfell. So we've now moved our prevention, protection and risk teams into one team, which is taking a much more holistic view of risk. If we're inspecting a building, rather than just on, do the fire doors work? Is the compartmentation right? It's also about, do we have the right information for our crews? Are the people in there aware of what they need to do in a fire? Do the managers know what to do? So we've changed the way in which we're doing that. And the Home Office have also recognised this, that actually there's a lot of work to do, because Grenfell was an outcome of years and years of legislation and things not working, and building materials perhaps being used that weren't suitable for building. Now, what we've recognised then, that actually the risk of Grenfell highlighted a much bigger risk, which is the built environment that we are all in. So many buildings may not have been built with the right fire safety legislation. Corners may have been cut. There may be materials out there that we don't know about that also may behave differently than we're expecting in fires. So we've recognised this risk. The Home Office and the NFC have recognised this risk. And so we've been given some additional grant funding, and the funding was based on how many high-risk buildings you would have in your patch. We've been given £316,909, and that is to make sure that we can properly discharge our fire protection duties, as well as assuring and making sure that all of our high-rise residential premises over 18 metres are reviewed by our crews by the end of December 2021, and to make sure that we have a full framework for identification and inspection in place. Now, actually, the scope in which we can use that money for is quite broad. So we've got a lot of angles. We can use it for technology, digital platforms, to increase training, to have more staff. So actually, we can use it how we see fit. And we're just setting up an action plan now, and a project which one of our group managers who was working in the NFCC on this work, who's just returned to us, he's heading up the project, and it's going to be setting up a high-rise and high-risk task force, which will be responsible for doing exactly that, to going into those buildings and making sure that they're safe. So there's probably a lot more detail that members will want. As I said, I've got Darren Peters here, who's the area manager, who's running our community risk team. Very happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Joe, thank you for that update. While I wait for members to indicate, just a small point. I think the work that we've done on this behind the scenes needs to be shared somehow. Is it possible that, is there a way that, I don't know, can we add something to our website so that people can see what we're doing? Is there something? It's important, because as I found out when I asked the question, you talked about the spreadsheet, I saw the spreadsheet, it's a massive spreadsheet. And I was concerned that we didn't appear to be, I didn't know that we were doing it until I asked the question, which is why I wanted it brought along today. Is there a way that we can publicise that? Is there a section of the website we can put it on to identify it? Because it's things like we hear very often, oh, that's massive impact for lots of people, but put it into perspective, the 177 or the number of places in Devon and Somerset that, that sort of thing, and some of the work that you're doing.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, that's certainly something I can work with the comms team on to make that far more visible. And I'm also hoping that through future CSCP committees, what we're suggesting is that members actually hold us to account and make sure that our process is assured and that we're spending the money wisely, getting the best value for money as well.
Sam, could you make a note then that perhaps that we look to add a recommendation that we can use that, bring it back, and that we can get a guide on how best we can hold the service to account. Thank you. First on my list, then, Councillor Trell. Jeff, do you want to come up first? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Afternoon, Joe. Do we take it that the new person you mentioned will be taking up the post to complete the NFCC building risk review? Because that says proportion of the grant, is that to specify the funding of an additional post? If that's the case, how long will this person be employed, and how will it be funded long term on completion, please?
Thanks, Jeff. I'm really happy to answer that question, but I'd like to give Darren Peters, the area manager, the opportunity to do that, if that's okay. Is that okay, Chair?
By all means, please.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Darren Peters. I apologise for the headgear, but it's the only way that I can talk without being disturbed. As Joe mentioned earlier, we've set up our high-risk and high-rise residential buildings team, which we've ambitiously called a task force. Now, we're going to use some of the grant funding. 60,000, or just over £60,000 of that, was ring-fenced for the building risk review, which, as Joe mentioned earlier, has to be completed by December 21. But as Joe also mentioned, we're taking a completely different approach to how we're going to provide community safety services in the future. And the high-rise team isn't going to be, or the high-rise task force isn't just going to be in place to complete the building risk review. Actually, what we're intending to do is to make that part of our ongoing function about the way that we deliver our services. One of the things that Joe did mention about it being a multidisciplinary team, so we're going to have protection officers in there. We're also going to have a member of the risk team in there, and we're also going to use members from the comms team as well. So we're going to be looking at engagement with both responsible people, management committees, but also the residents in there, because what we want to do is, with a new approach to community safety, is take the people that receive the service as the main focus. So we want to listen to what it is that they need as well, and also to make sure that we educate them as well as the building management committees. So yeah, for reassurance, that team isn't going to be in place just for a short period of time. The money that we've received is going to be an additional source of money to get kind of pump prime that whole process. But our intention is that that's our new approach, and that's going to be the ongoing way that we manage community safety in the future. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, Lee. My apologies.
That's fine. I was just saying, Darren, thank you for that interjection. Jeff, you happy? Just you can nod if you like.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Next up, the Vice Chair, Councillor Wheeler. George, you have a question, sir? I didn't see you in the meeting, so I apologise for that. Welcome.
Oh, thanks very much. Yes, Joe mentioned that the new post holder will help us in the identification of all the problems with the high-rise residential blocks. Does that include specialist student accommodation, please?
Thanks very much, Councillor Wheeler. Good question. So yes, so the actual funding, the funding is quite specific to do with high-rise buildings that are residential, but the risk team that Darren's talked about, so it depends on your kind of how you categorise it. we're not really worried about that, because actually the way that we're going to set this team up that Darren's just described means that will cover all of our high risk premises, and that will include student accommodation, it'll include hospitals, it'll include care homes, all of those difficult complex buildings. When I talked earlier about the changes in building legislation and the difficulties over the last couple of decades, we recognise that actually that is a massive increased risk to our firefighters, to the public, to those that use those buildings, because we don't know how they're going to behave in fire now. We don't know. So this team isn't just focusing on high rise, although that will be their priority, because we've been given very clear direction from the Home Office, and that's what the funding's for. What we want to do is take this as an opportunity to change the way we look at risk completely, to make sure that we absolutely cover all of those buildings that you may have seen around student accommodation and around the kind of building materials that might be used for those.
Can I just come back, Chair?
Yes, George.
Excellent. That's very reassuring. Thanks very much, Joe. It actually covers a point I raised at the forum, so thanks for that. You didn't mention hotels, but are hotels included?
Yes, absolutely. So you'll be aware that certainly our teams in Torbay do an awful amount of work around hotels. I'm just going to bring Darren in because I've seen he's put his video on, so he's probably got some good information.
Yeah, so hi again, members. So that high-risk, high-rise residential buildings will also be including, as Joe's mentioned, where we've got high levels of life risk. So care homes will be included in that as well. Student accommodation, like you said, hospitals as well. So it'll cover a wide range of high-risk residential buildings.
Chair, I'm very happy once the team's been formed and we've got clear scope in terms of reference. Very happy to bring that back at a further either forum or CSCP.
Thank you. The answer I was going to suggest was both, but the forum gives us an opportunity to inform more members. That's why it was there. That's why it would be good. George, you're still up. Did you want to come back or have I?
No, very happy with that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on then, Margaret, Councillor Corvid, your question, please.
Thanks, Chair. With reference to the fact that the Devonport high-rises are now being seen as low risk, how are we informing the public when the buildings that they live in risk profile changes? And what are the general plans to make sure the public is informed about these changes in risk profile? Thanks.
Thanks, Margaret. So actually, for most of these buildings, like residential buildings, it's actually down to the building owners or the responsible person to do that piece of work. So what they have to do is do a fire risk assessment, which means that they have to assess all of the risks in the building and make sure that they've got the appropriate plans and measures in place. So it's actually, in most cases, certainly with commercial buildings and areas, certainly in the common areas and those which we're talking about with Grenfell, it's down to the responsible person to do that. However, we also have a duty to make sure that we inform the public and make sure that they're protected. So that's actually the reason why we're trying to get this high risk team in place, because actually up to this point we'll have approached it very differently, whereas we'd have probably had a protection team who look at the business safety and the kind of structure of the building. They might have gone in 1 month and done a load of checks. Then we may have sent some some of our great community safety teams in to go into their flats and fit smoke detectors and talk to them specifically about high-rise fires, and we do a lot of that, by the way, so that's part of how we educate them. And then we would have probably sent our risk team in to look at the building and how it will affect our firefighting operations and how we have to change that. Before this, we'd have done it all separately. What this approach does is it means we will have one team that will do the whole lot in one go and look at it all holistically. So we do have a duty to make sure that we are advising people, and I can see Darren's put his video on again, so Darren's gonna come in and help me out there.
So as Joe was talking about earlier about the Hackett review, one of the things that Judith Hackett identified was that you can't treat these buildings as individual areas of risk. Actually, what you have to look at is treat it as a complex system, and that includes the occupancy, so the residents who are in there, the people who manage the building, the structure of the building, the engineering solutions in that building. The whole thing has to be treated, as Joe mentioned earlier, holistically, and that's what we'll do. And one of the things that Councillor Corbett pointed out about how do we talk to the members of the public, the people in there. So one of the things that this team is going to do is to engage with the residents, and we're kind of working that up at the moment, but we're actually thinking about a proper full engagement with all of those residents. Hold a meeting for all those residents to talk to them about the overall risk in the building, not just the risk in their flats, but how the fire safety measures within that building support their safety, why the measures in their flats add to that overall safety in the building. So it is a real joined up approach. Hopefully that gives you a better answer.
Thank
Darren,
you.
Joe, thank you. That was brilliant, because one of the things that we need to be doing as well is building people's confidence in their fire safety. It's okay saying there's a fire risk assessment in place, but is it robust? Are we testing it? Are we making sure that it fits the purpose? And do we know what's going on there? That's something that this is fantastic news that we're going to use that money in that way to build on that. I've got no other questions. I'll just pause for a second, members, in case anyone else wants to come in quickly. The recommendations, I think, are pretty much as written in the paper, but just to clarify, recommendation A, that the committee reviews at future meetings the assurance process. Oh, there we go, as if by magic. The assurance process for the Grenville recommendations and the Home Office returns for the building risk review grant funding. And so that's subject to A, the above, the report be noted. I know we've made a couple of other points there about publicising stuff, but I'll make sure that those are recorded in the minutes rather than actions. Members, if you're happy with that, I'll just pause for anyone to jump in for any objections. Any dissent in that? Any abstentions? We can take that as unanimous. Fantastic. Bear with me 2 seconds while I change bits of paper. Okay. Home stretch then, members. Item 6 of our agenda is the briefing on service support for other organisations during the COVID-19 emergency. Just for clarity, I asked for this to be put on the agenda for a couple of reasons. It's part of our remit as a committee to understand partnership arrangements within Devon and Somerset Fire, but it's also important that we highlight and support colleagues and partners in going forward. And as I said right in the very beginning, this is and the word I hate, but it's been used, unprecedented times. It's worth shining a light and just showing some of the other things that we're doing. So the report, that was the reason I asked for the report. Is that Joe again? Thank you, Joe. If you'd like to present the report, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. This is one of those really positive ones that I'm really happy to be talking about. And I've also got Area Manager Gerald Taylor here as well to help me out. He's been absolutely, pivotal in making a lot of this work happen. Him and his team have done a fantastic job in, as you say, Chair, really difficult times. So this paper outlines the response for Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue with other agencies through the COVID pandemic. So members may be aware, and just for those that aren't, when we entered business continuity, we changed our structure, our internal structure, into a gold, silver, bronze command that meant that we could very quickly bring information through that was triaged and then pushed into the various cells. Area Manager Gerald Taylor was in charge of the medical cell, and essentially what that meant was we would be getting requests through the local resilience forum, so that's the team of category 1 responders, and essentially asked for assistance. And the main assistance that we were asked for was to help our health colleagues, mainly around driving ambulances and to and from hospital. So on the 31st of March, we had this request. And we asked our staff to say, we've been asked for some drivers to drive ambulances. Who would like to volunteer? And we had 448 people out of just under 2,000 volunteering, which just shows you how much our staff wanted to help and get involved. In the end, we couldn't obviously choose all of those, so we had got 55 of those, and we'll talk about actually how the ambulance driving worked in a moment. Firstly, it's important to note that there was some structure around this and some very clear rules around some of these areas, and that was through the tripartite agreement, which was a national agreement between the National Fire Chiefs Council, the National Joint Council for Authority Fire and Rescue Services, and the Fire Brigades Union. And there were the agreement actually grew and grew as the COVID pandemic changed and as more risks were introduced. Thankfully, those were added. There was only 2 of those areas that we really got heavily involved in. One of those was ambulance driving, and one of those was face fit testing for face masks, although there was a number of others that we explored and were ready to go had we been asked. There's some other things that we also did. I'll get to the ambulance driving in a minute because that's really important. But there were some other areas that we also helped out. So one of our assistant chiefs was seconded in to help the local resilience forum in Devon and Cornwall, and that was to help. And also Damien Borlase also helped with that. And that was to make sure that we were helping coordinate all the volunteer activities that were going on in those areas, because it needed a bit of structure, and we were specifically asked by the police to get involved and add some weight to that. We had some of our technicians who usually carry out home fire safety visits. They were sent into Plymouth to go and door knock on the most vulnerable people. So those that were shielded, but for some reason hadn't been able to be contacted, they needed some boots on the ground. So we also helped out with that. We've done 115 face fit testing that's for NHS and primary carers. And we've also led in some of the redesigning how we do co-responding. So as obviously we have our fire appliances, and we also have co-responder vehicles as well, who are also firefighters that go out into medical emergencies. And there was a lot of issues, as you can imagine, around the way in which we did that because of infection rates. So we led the way for the region in doing that. And then of course we get to helping out SWAST with the autonomous dispatchers, which was within their clinical hubs. And that was essentially making sure that the ambulance service could cope with the anticipated surge that was going to happen from coronavirus. So what we did, this is a real success story. So our Chief Fire Officer, Lee Howell, actually led the development of that for the region, for the Southwest, and developed the concept of operation with SWAST for all 5 Southwest Fire and Rescue Services. For us, we had 5 ambulances, and in Devon, where that was Torquay, Exeter and Bideford, and in Somerset, it was Taunton and Shepton Mallet, and that's now moved to Glastonbury. The first ambulances went live in Torquay and Taunton on the 15th of April, and that was 2 weeks after the initial request was made. Now, there was a lot, and Gerald can probably tell you this if you have any, there was a lot to do in that time. There were risk assessments, there was PPE, there was training, there was a heck of a lot to do, and the cell did an amazing job to make that happen as quickly as it did. As I said, we had 44 volunteers, and we had the first firefighters in the country to be driving ambulances on a blue light, which we're incredibly proud of. Initially, they were firstly doing slightly lower kind of acuity calls, but since the 29th of June, due to another request, they've actually been working alongside paramedics and responding to every category, so those very high-risk ones. I'm just going to move over onto page 20, just to talk about, just so you can see the figures there. And if you have any questions, Gerald will be able to cover all the categories for you. But in total, and this is between the 15th of April and the 29th of June, and there's been a lot more since then, we went to 1,376 emergencies that we helped out on. Those calls have had all kinds of things, from moving people from hospitals to organ replacement donations to heart attacks, and the Shepton Mallet crew do deserve a special mention for delivering a baby girl on behalf of the very happy parents, which is a great story. You'll see in section 4, there's some really fantastic quotes from our staff and also one of the ambulance paramedics. who, and I've spoken to most of the staff as well, and that we've forged some absolutely fantastic links now. They were strong before, but now they're much stronger. The benefits, not just to society through this, but actually to our staff and to SWAS. You know, when I've spoken to our staff, the learning that they've developed, the way they speak to patients, the increase in how they know how to treat things, and a lot of them are co-responders that can bring back into the service, is really, really powerful. So just in the future then, we've been asked to remain doing this until the 31st of July. We'll then review then. But of course, this has opened lots of interesting discussions, and we'd like to continue with those in the future with our partners. So I'll stop there. Very happy to take any, myself and Gerald, very happy to take any questions.
Gerald, just before I bring anyone else questions, did you want to add anything to that? Or are you happy to respond if required, sir?
Chair, I would just like to re-emphasise what Joe has said. It's been an amazing project, and to be quite honest, I've been humbled by the way that our people have volunteered to work with the SWAS colleagues, and even the relationship and the partnership and the friendships that have been forged through this have been absolutely fantastic.
Thank you. Members, any questions? While I wait for the members to jump in, I'll drop one in. There have been, it's about colleague support really. There have been some sad occasions as well as all the good ones there. Can you just confirm that we've got the debriefing and mental health support in place for firefighters that have been impacted by any of those, please?
Happy to let Gerald answer that, Chair.
Chair, yes, absolutely. A very good question and a very important issue. When we developed the concept of operations for the project, one of the key parts was actually to understand what support we should put in place for our people. Now, we were fortunate that we pulled together into the medical cell a number of station managers who were diffusers already, and they've been working 24/7 availability for all of our ambulance volunteers. So they've been available at all times. There's a WhatsApp group that they've set up, and they are in continual dialogue to make sure that they've been okay. But crucially, we were also able to take the advantage of the SWAS systems and support systems that are in place. So they've had, if you like, a double amount of support in terms of dealing with the welfare following any traumatic incidents. And we do debriefing every time they finish tours as well. So we've been very conscious of the requirement to make sure our people are well supported when dealing with such traumatic incidents.
So perhaps I know there's members of the authority that may not understand the diffusing process. You want to just quickly, just 30 seconds about what that is?
Yeah, so if ever any of our members of staff are involved in any traumatic incident, we make sure that they have intervention from trained on-call, 24/7 on-call station managers who will go and meet them and make sure they're okay, and then advise of any future referral processes should they require it.
Fantastic. I'm not seeing any hands. I can keep going if you like. Okay, so Joe talked about dropping back on the service. Are we ready for a second wave?
Yes, we've been talking to SWAS throughout this. So we have a weekly conference call with SWAS, and they share with us their surge data. So they are forever trying to predict what may be happening with the infection. At the moment, they've asked us now to extend towards the end of August. That's just come in recently. We think that it's likely that they won't require us throughout September, but a lot of the dialogue we've been having with SWAS is getting ready for future demand should that occur. So SWAS have brought in 15 additional vehicles to support this scheme. They will keep them in the system, and we are ready and have the mechanisms in place to actually support them should that second surge come.
Fantastic. I'm not seeing any other members, so I'll do one more and then we'll start winding up then. You mentioned about the learning. I'm always keen that we share the learning, and I'm sure that's the process. how are we documenting the learning from this, and how will we maybe as authority members be able to see what is being brought back into the service, what benefits are there? Joe, you put your hand up.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so so I'll let Jill give a bit of detail on that, but just so we'd absolutely love to queue this up into a forum. We think this is a fantastic story that members would actually probably like to meet some of us. Whether we'll be able to, whether you'll be actually able to meet them in person by then, or whether it will have to be virtual. But we think there's some really amazing stories that we'd like you to hear, and give you the chance to speak to them and ask them about their experience. We think there might be some really exciting opportunities here to explore in the future. So it'd be really interesting to do that. But I will let Gerald answer the second part of the question about how we're capturing that learning.
Yeah, Chair, I'd like to particularly mention two individuals that have been working tirelessly in the background. Two of our station managers, Donna Nelms and Simon Wonnacott. They really have worked tirelessly to make this project happen. What they've been doing is asking the ambulance teams to share the feedback on a continual basis, and have been logging and building up all that experience. So we're capturing it live and current. So we've got a real insight into what's happening now. We're capturing the lessons as well from those individuals. There's also an app being created for all of our volunteers that they're able now to log every call they go to by the different category type, and that's how we've improved the data capture. So they're actually very involved as volunteers in terms of us understanding what they've been going through. But crucially, we've already been talking with SWAST and the other fire and rescue services that have been involved in this about doing a proper learning debrief at the end of it to capture what we believe has been some fantastic lessons that I think can be applied in the future. The speed and pace at which we were able to turn this from a request into a professional, properly assessed and safe delivery, I think is something that we can all learn from.
Thank you. Councillor Saywell, you sneaked in under the wire. Well done.
Yes.
Andrew, over to you.
Well, I don't have a question, I'm afraid, Chair, because you asked the questions I would have asked anyway. But I just wanted to actually just put on record my thanks to Gerald and to Joe and all the team who've worked so incredibly hard on this. I think this is a fantastic outcome and a very, very good report. And I'm very happy to formally move that we note the report and the recommendations.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and I said at the beginning, and I will continue to say how proud I am to be part of this service and everyone that works in it. The proposal, Polly, were you looking to? I just had a little note to say Polly may want to come in. Did you want to come in?
Yes, please. Can you hear me? I wasn't sure my microphone had unmuted. Yeah, I just did have a question because I keep hearing in different authorities that of course with COVID-19, everybody had to move very fast. The disease was moving very fast, and all the plans had to move very fast, and they did. And yet, all local authorities seem to have of every sort have a reputation for being a bit ponderous and doing everything very slowly and bureaucratically. Bureaucracy is always the key word, and yet you can do it when you have to. What was the difference? Was it just the urgency? Were some of the bureaucratic procedures set aside in order to speed things up, or what? Please, thank you.
Yeah, interesting actually. Yeah, so yes, that is what happened. And actually the urgency I think was pretty. It was clear for all of us to see. What we did is when we stepped into business continuity. So fortunately our training does this. So all of those people that you've seen today, we've all been trained in emergency management for major incidents, and that major incident training that we do, it's a week long, and then we have to review it, and we exercise quite a lot. What that entails is setting up big strategic structures very quickly, gathering very fast information and getting in systems to push it down very quickly, and things like so we essentially replicated the stuff that we'd learnt that you'd normally do with other agencies and partners, and we made it an internal structure. So we kind of went, that works really well over there in emergency. It's the first time we'd done it, by the way. Let's try and see if it works internally. And it worked really well. So what that meant was we had the right decision makers at the right level making all of those decisions, and only when they couldn't make that decision because there was something in the way would they come up to Gold, which was executive board level, and say, can you give us a steer on this, please? And it happened very quickly. You know, they were meeting every day. And so Gerald was in charge of one of the cells, and he was given the autonomy to just get on with it and tell us if there's a problem. Now, that's not how we've been working, I'll be honest with you. What the great bit that Damien's now working on with Maria is recovery, and about we've learned all of this fantastic stuff about we've been this really agile organisation. We've empowered people. Our staff feedback that we did a staff feedback recently, and I'm very happy to share that with everybody. Was off the charts for people feeling empowered and for feeling that they were making a difference, and actually they trusted their senior leaders and they trusted their teams. So what we're now doing is working out how do we replicate this agile, fast decision making, understanding we are going to be in a bit more slow time, but how do we get the best bits out of that and move it into going forward? So we're doing that. That's all the plan, is to try and do exactly that. I hope that answers your question.
I think as well, Polly, we would have all noticed as councillors that another thing that was factored, apart from that we had to, in a lot of the cases, it was more a matter of that we were willing to accept the odd error. For example, going virtual. For example, how long members falling off. I believe a new sentence that we all start every conversation with is, "Can you hear me?" before you do a response. So our attitudes have changed as well. The fact that we were in it, I think that helped, that contributed.
So we've learned to be a little less risk averse.
Yes, and I think not just risk averse. I think we were probably, we were very clear with people to say right at the beginning, you're going to make mistakes. Don't worry, we're going to make mistakes as well, but make them fast. And then just learn from them and try not to make the same mistake again. But we're not going to get it right because we're, and we haven't got everything right. I would say I think we've got a lot right and done really well. And I think our sickness records and things have shown that we feel we've got a really fast grip on this. But I think it's because we had some excellent people in those areas, and everybody stepped up. And I think what we really want to capture going forward, not just the empowerment and the decision making, but it was that one team approach. Every single person in the organisation knew what our vision was and our aim was, and it was to keep people safe from COVID and provide an emergency response. And they absolutely got in behind that. We had people at a moment's notice moving from one job to another, changing hours, doing all kinds of things that they'd never done before. The benefits that we've had mixing teams together, the learning that we've all had, that I've had and others have had from working with new people that we don't normally work with, it's been brilliant, absolutely fantastic. And that's what we need to capture as we move forward.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so members, Councillor Saywell has proposed that we note the recommendation, unless anyone shouts an objection to that or abstention. We take it as unanimous. Thank you, Sam, for that. That's the end, members. As I said, I'll finish where I started by saying a big thank you. I know that our chair will be making and I know that every member of the authority is grateful for the hard work and effort that everyone at every level has put in. We've heard some amazing stories today, and I hope it won't be the end of us hearing it, because we need to be telling people how we managed to do it. So on behalf of myself, I want to chair this meeting. If there's no other business, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you. All the very best. Well
Thank
done,
you.
Chair.
Thank you.
Lee.
Everyone.
Thank you, everybody.